apple fritters. My youngest has this really awful habit of going to the grocery store and begging for apples, bananas, strawberries, whatever, but he never finishes them. So I always have this abundance of produce and I hate wasting food. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out fun ways to cook what he hasn't eaten before it goes bad. So today it's apple fritters. I used about 4 apples, and this is the last of it. All I'm going to do is, after I use my apple slicer, and if you don't have one, it's not a big deal, but now I'm going to cut those slices in half, and again, dice them so that they have small chunks, about that size. They don't have to be even and uniform, they just have to be small enough that they're not bursting out of your fritter once it's made, which is why I cut it in half like this, and then again. There we go. So this took about 4 apples, and you need about 6 cups total, depending on the size of your apples, how many you'll need. Okay, and then I'm going to start my dry ingredients. I need 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Need 2 tablespoons of sugar, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, and a teaspoon of salt. And we're going to whisk all of that together. And then I'm going to take, I have 4 eggs, and I'm just going to take my tiny whisk and break up the yolks in there. Before I add it to my dry mixture, along with 1 1/3 cups of whole milk. And you don't have to use whole milk. I prefer whole milk when I'm baking and doing stuff like that, just because it makes it more, I don't know, full and robust. And then I have 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. And now I'm going to whisk all of that together. Once we have our batter mixed, we're going to slowly fold in our apples. So, apples. I'm just going to stir gently to try to incorporate all of those in, and then we will head to the stove where we're going to heat up some oil. It needs to be heated to 375 degrees. I have about 1 inch of oil in the bottom of my saucepan, heated to 375 degrees. Now I'm going to take my scoop, and I'm just going to drop scoops of my apple fritter batter into the oil. About 4 of them at a time, so we don't crowd the pan. You know, the more that you put stuff into the pan, the lower the temperature on the oil goes. So I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes, and then we're going to flip them over and cook the other side. Okay, so it only took about 3 minutes, and they're already dark on one side, so I'm just going to flip them. You got to keep an eye on anything you're frying. You don't want it to get too dark, and then it burns, and that doesn't taste good. And we'll keep doing this with the rest of the batter until we've made all our fritters. And then we'll go back to the table, and we'll do the glaze. So when they're finished frying and they're golden brown all the way around, I'm going to stick them on my paper towel lined cookie sheet that has a wire rack over it. This is going to let the grease drip down onto the paper towels and leave us with less greasy apple fritters. And now we're going to continue with the rest of our batter. And we'll keep doing this until we've used up all the batter. So this is our final batch. When these are done, we're going to head back to the table, and I'm going to finish them two different ways. I have one child who loves a good glaze, which is, you know, powdered sugar, cream, and vanilla, and one who loves cinnamon sugar. So I'm going to do it half and half, so you can see either way. Okay, so now I'm going to make the glaze. I have a 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. I have a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. And then I have 3 teaspoons of vanilla. I'm just going to whisk all of that together. And it's a little thick, so I'm going to get some more cream to add to it. So I added 3 more tablespoons. There we go. Much more of a glaze and less of an icing. There we are. I'm going to take my fritters and gently glaze them. And you only really need to glaze them on one side, because this is enough that you don't need to do it all over. Just going to dip one side in. Option 2. I have mixed together about 1 cup of sugar and a teaspoon of cinnamon, and I'm just going to sprinkle it over the top. This also works better if you do it when they're first out of the oven, I mean out of the fryer. But there we are.